Lucille Ball was already 40 when she became America's favorite redhead, yet her greatest battles happened off-screen. A father lost too soon, a childhood shadowed by trauma, a marriage to Desi Arnaz that looked joyful on television, but was quietly unraveling in real life. For years, fans sensed it. Something never quite added up. Now, at 73, her daughter Lucy Arnaz is finally breaking that silence. What truths did she spend decades protecting? What did fans sense all along, but were never allowed to hear out loud? And why does her confession change everything we thought we knew about Lucille Ball's real life? Stay with us, because this revelation confirms what many suspected, but no one dared to say. Lucille Ball lost her father at a very young age. Lucille Ball was born on August 6, 1911, in western New York, to Desiree Dee Dee Hunt and her husband, Henry Durrell Ball. In her autobiography, Love, Lucy, she later explained that the family moved frequently during her early years, first to Montana for her father's work as a telephone company lineman, and then to Wyandotte, Michigan, when she was about 3 years old. She remembered her father with deep affection, describing him as a warm, lively man who, according to her mother, passed down her sense of humor. He played with her roughly and joyfully, tossing her into the air and catching her just before she hit the floor, moments she would later connect to her fearlessness and love of physical comedy. Looking back, she once joked that she was known among comedians as someone who would attempt almost any stunt. Lucille adored her father, but that happiness was cut short soon after the move to Michigan. Henry fell ill with the flu, and before he could recover, a violent winter storm struck the area. Despite a high fever and severe cough, he went out into the sleet and snow to repair downed telephone wires. His condition worsened instead of improving, developing into typhoid fever. He died not long after the storm, on February 28, 1915, a loss that marked Lucille Ball's life far earlier than the laughter she would later bring to the world. A gun-playing incident cost Lucille Ball's family everything. After her father's death, Lucille Ball's mother eventually remarried a metal polisher named Ed Peterson. In her memoir, Love, Lucy, Ball recalled that the blended family moved in with her grandparents in a modest 3-bedroom house in Celeron, New York. Money was scarce, but Lucille remembered those years as emotionally rich, writing that her grandparents gave them a deeply satisfying family life despite having very little. That fragile stability shattered on Lucille's 16th birthday. She later described her grandfather, Fred, arriving home with a .22 caliber rifle wrapped in brown paper. What began as innocent curiosity quickly turned tragic. Her brother wanted to try it out. Tin cans were set up in the backyard, and neighborhood children gathered to watch. When one of the girls picked up the gun, a sudden call from a parent startled her, and the rifle discharged. A boy named Warner was struck and rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered the bullet had passed through his spine, severing the cord. Ed Peterson offered to cover the medical costs, but Warner's family filed a lawsuit and won. The consequences were devastating. The family lost their home, their furniture, and everything Lucille's mother had painstakingly paid for week by week. Her grandfather never worked again, emotionally broken by the ordeal. As Lucille later reflected, the tragedy didn't just end their life in Celeron, it destroyed the sense of family and security they had struggled so hard to build. A traumatic childhood experience left her with paranoid tendencies. Losing her father at just 3 years old was only the beginning of Lucille Ball's childhood trauma. Long before she became a Hollywood legend, she endured experiences that would quietly follow her for the rest of her life, even as the world came to know her as the queen of comedy. In her memoir, Love, Lucy, Ball recalled a disturbing episode from when her mother was pregnant with her younger brother, Freddie. Her father had fallen ill with the flu, and in an effort to keep her under control, her mother tied her to a dog leash in the backyard. Lucille remembered standing there, begging to be untied each time someone passed on the sidewalk. And according to biographer Charles Hyam, that moment was not even the most damaging. Hyam wrote that when her father was later diagnosed with typhoid fever, the family was placed under strict quarantine. The forced isolation and sense of rejection left a lasting mark on young Lucille. He suggested that this early experience helped shape her deep fear of being shut out and may have fueled her lifelong need to be accepted, loved, and embraced by an audience, a drive that would later define her extraordinary career. Lucille Ball was told to give up on acting. There's no question that Lucille Ball became one of the most influential figures in comedy history. Honored with awards like the Golden Globes Cecil B. DeMille Award and the American Comedy Awards Lifetime Achievement Award, her impact on television has spanned generations. Yet what's often overlooked is how close she came to walking away before that legacy ever began. At just 15, while chasing her first dreams on Broadway, a drama teacher bluntly told her to give up. Ball soon left school, but instead of quitting, she pushed harder, enrolling at the John Murray Anderson Dramatic School in New York. She appeared in a few Broadway chorus roles, but real momentum came when she shifted into modeling. Her face soon appeared on billboards, magazine ads, and store posters across the country, making her a familiar presence long before she was a household name. By 1933, she set her sights on Hollywood. Perhaps that early rejection stayed with her. In a 1983 interview with Rolling Stone, Ball famously downplayed her own comedic talent, saying she wasn't funny. Her writers, directors, and situations were. What she believed she truly possessed, she said, was bravery. Given everything she endured in life, it's hard to argue that she wasn't right. Her marriage to Desi Arnaz was nothing like it was portrayed on screen. When I Love Lucy premiered on CBS in October 1951, it became an instant phenomenon, fueled by the irresistible chemistry between Lucy McGillicuddy Ricardo, played by Lucille Ball, and her on-screen husband Ricky Ricardo, portrayed by Desi Arnaz. What made the magic even stronger was the fact that Ball and Arnaz were married in real life. Looking back years later, Ball admitted that for her, the love was real from the very beginning. Behind the scenes, however, the show was created for more than entertainment. In many ways, it was an attempt to save their marriage. Arnaz's charm often vanished when alcohol entered the picture. Keith Thibodeau, who played Little Ricky, later recalled that while Desi could be warm and generous, the children on set knew to keep their distance when he was drinking. Alongside his alcoholism came repeated infidelities, and Ball regularly found herself considering divorce. Friends saw the toll it took on her. Actress Ann Sothern once reflected that Ball carried a deep sadness beneath her humor, remembering late-night phone calls when Lucille begged her to intervene as Desi spiraled. After 2 decades of marriage, the strain became unbearable, and the couple divorced in 1960. Years later, Ball summed it up bluntly, describing Arnaz as 2 different men, one lovable, the other consumed by alcohol and affairs. Lucille Ball suffered 2 miscarriages with Desi Arnaz. Many fans are aware that Lucille Ball's marriage to her I Love Lucy co-star Desi Arnaz was far from the fairy tale viewers saw on television. Behind the laughter, Arnaz's repeated infidelities and struggles with alcohol left Ball emotionally drained, and the strain of those years is often linked to the fact that she suffered several miscarriages. So why did she remain in such a painful marriage for so long? Actress and close friend Ruta Lee once suggested that Ball was driven by a deep desire to please Arnaz. Despite her strength and independence, Lucy became surprisingly traditional when it came to her husband. Still, even her patience had limits. In 1944, just 4 years into their marriage, the couple separated briefly before reconciling after promising to work together more closely and align their professional lives. The success of I Love Lucy, which debuted in 1951, seemed to bring a rare period of stability. 3 months before the show premiered, Ball gave birth to their daughter, Lucy, followed by their son, Desi Jr., in 1953. Looking back in a 1980 interview with People, Ball said her greatest pride wasn't fame or awards, but becoming a mother, especially having her first child at 39, which she considered her greatest accomplishment. She retired her legendary character to film her final feature film, and it tanked. During its original run, I Love Lucy didn't just entertain America, it stopped it in its tracks. The show became so wildly popular that, as the Los Angeles Times later noted, the nation essentially paused every Monday night from 9 to 9:30 p.m. Even department stores closed their doors during the broadcast, some posting signs proudly announcing, "We love Lucy too." When the series ended in 1957, Lucille Ball eventually revisited the character years later with Here's Lucy in 1968, a show that also starred her two children and helped launch their careers. By 1974, she decided it was time to let Lucy go for good, famously saying the character had grown too old for the kind of physical comedy that once defined her. That same year, Ball took on her final feature film, Mame, a movie adaptation of the Broadway musical. The reception was brutal, and even composer Jerry Herman later admitted he was deeply disappointed with the result. Still, Ball wasn't ready to fade away quietly. At 75, she returned to television with Life with Lucy in 1986, but the series quickly failed. According to her former publicist, Thomas Watson, the problem wasn't Ball herself. It was that the writers were trying to recreate the old Lucy rather than allowing her to evolve into a more age-appropriate role. Lucille Ball's son, Desi Jr., became a drug addict. Lucille Ball's second child, Desi Arnaz Jr., born in 1953, grew up carrying the weight of a famous last name and a reputation that often echoed his father's. By his own admission, he embraced a wild, impulsive lifestyle at a young age. In a 1978 interview, he described himself as a former playboy, saying that from the time he was just 13, he believed he was constantly falling in love. That recklessness led to an especially shocking moment. He became a father himself at only 15. But his struggles went far beyond romantic entanglements. Friends close to Lucille Ball later revealed that Desi Jr. battled substance abuse for years. One family confidant said Lucille endured enormous stress because of his drug use, but she never turned her back on him. Desi Jr. later confirmed that unwavering support, explaining that even at his lowest points, both of his parents stood beside him, determined to help him recover. Eventually, Desi Jr. made the decision that changed everything. He entered rehab. When he did, both Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz joined him, offering hands-on support throughout the process. Looking back decades later, Desi Jr. said the experience helped his parents as much as it helped him, marking one of the rare moments where the fractured Arnaz Ball family faced its pain together, honestly and head-on. Lucille Ball's tumultuous marriage left her short-tempered. By 1960, Lucille Ball had finally reached her breaking point. After nearly 2 decades of enduring Desi Arnaz's infidelity, gambling, and heavy drinking, she filed for divorce. A close friend later said she was simply exhausted by the situation, and by the constant public sympathy that followed her everywhere. That emotional strain often spilled into her work. People around her noticed the tension, especially on set, where moods could shift quickly. Some co-stars later described an atmosphere that required careful navigation when Ball wasn't feeling well, noting that her temper could surface under pressure. Yet the divorce also brought clarity. In the years that followed, Ball became a quiet source of guidance for other actresses facing public breakups. Having lived through it herself, she warned them that fame often complicates relationships, and that strength, not pity, was the only way forward. The death of Desi Arnaz completely shattered Lucille Ball. Sometimes love isn't enough to save a marriage, and for Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, that truth became unavoidable. By early 1960, There was no turning back. After 20 years together, Hollywood's most famous couple divorced on March 4, 1960. What surprised many was what came next. Instead of bitterness, their bond seemed to improve. Their daughter later said that once the marriage ended, her parents became closer, warmer, and even more affectionate as friends than they ever were as spouses. Both eventually remarried, but their connection never truly faded. In his final days, Desi Arnaz told Lucille he loved her, offering quiet encouragement before saying goodbye. And after Lucille passed away years later, her second husband reportedly remarked that she was finally at peace, back with Desi at last. Lucille Ball passed away right as she was recovering from surgery. In April 1989, Lucille Ball suffered a heart attack at 77 and underwent more than 7 hours of open-heart surgery. Doctors initially described her condition as serious but hopeful, while fans and fellow entertainers around the world held their breath. Bob Hope summed up the mood simply, saying, "There was only one Lucy, and everyone was praying for her." Despite the flood of messages and well wishes, Ball's condition took a sudden turn. On April 26, 1989, a week after being admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, she died from a ruptured abdominal aorta. Hospital officials later said there had been no warning signs. Friends found comfort in knowing she spent her final hours feeling loved. One close companion shared that she went to bed the night before her death aware of the immense affection surrounding her. And decades later, that love hasn't faded. The world still loves Lucy. Lucille Ball's great-granddaughter died young. The legacy of tragedy in Lucille Ball's family continued long after her death. According to Legacy, Lucille Ball never lived to meet one of her great-grandchildren, Desiree Anzalone. Ball died in April 1989 at age 77, just months before her granddaughter Julia Arnaz gave birth later that year. Desiree Anzalone, the great-granddaughter of Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and the granddaughter of Desi Arnaz Jr., grew up to become an artist and photographer. In April 2019, she revealed on Instagram that she was battling stage 4 breast cancer. In her final post in August 2020, she shared a Frida Kahlo painting alongside a quote from Antonin Artaud about rising above pain. Words, she said, brought her comfort. On September 27, 2020, Desiree Anzalone died at Smilow Cancer Hospital in Connecticut. She was just 31 years old, marking another quiet heartbreak in a family long shaped by both fame and loss. Lucille Ball spent her life making the world laugh, even while carrying pain most people never saw. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep, revealing stories like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's uncovered next.